This is going to be a big question here. What makes a company valuable?
So it probably more if you really break it down, but in essence, how reliable has the company been?
All right, everyone, I'm here with Dave Marchese of SJC Business Capital based in Colorado. Super excited to be digging in and asking a lot of questions around buying and selling roofing and construction companies. When I first started the podcast, this was one of the topics I definitely wanted to tackle, because even if a company is not looking to sell, they are looking to build an asset that's really worth something, and not just have a transactional business. So I'm really excited and honored to be sitting down today virtually with Dave Marchese. What's going on, Dave?
Hello. Thanks for making time.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm sure you're busy and you've got a lot of deals going on and that you're working and whatnot. So can you just start out by giving the audience a little bit of a rundown on what you do at SJC and a little bit of your background, how you got into this industry of buying and selling companies?
Absolutely. Originally from the East Coast, moved out here 17, 18 years ago. Really just moved out here. A close friend of mine said, "Oh, come on out." Came out. I was in advertising sales for a little bit, and then got turned on to business brokering. That's going back over 15 years now. Started off small, got punched in the face, fell down, figured things out. Always wanted to learn, always wanted to take more and more on. So kind of grew into that, and then even took further steps to where we're at today, which we'll kind of go through. But family's East Coast. Actually missed out on the summer trip a couple weeks ago to Jersey Shore, but there's always next year. What kind of deals do I do? What do we focus on? So my role is constantly being in front of business owners over the phone, a lot more today than usual, obviously, email, and really answering the questions that I think a lot of your people are probably asking about today. How do I know when the right time to sell is? What's the value? What are you going to add to the process? What do you do? How much do you charge? How do you get paid? All of that every day. Different people, same conversations. We have active deals we're going. That's a different side of it. But we're always trying to be in front of business owners to tell them, well, answer the questions they have, quite frankly. You can't do the square peg in the round hole. This is how I do. No. Tell me what you want to do, and I can tell you if we can help or not. Kind of situation.
Perfect. I love that. And our goal today is to share, kind of unpack some of your knowledge, some of your experience, and share that value with our audience, who is mostly going to be roofing industry owners, managers, construction industry, decision makers, and whatnot. So, and I know we talked before we kind of hit record that every situation is unique. There's no cut and dry formula for how much is my business worth or something like that. But at least by listening to this or watching this, then someone can start to get a feel for the thought process and kind of the framework that you go about valuing a company and how decisions are made and what makes a company attractive to buy or to sell. So let's dig into some of that, Dave. You have a business owner, roofing company owner that has been in business for a little while, and maybe 10 years or so, and maybe you start thinking about selling. Hey, I want to do something else. I've been working hard. I've been traveling around the country, been working 80 hours a week, having kids, building a family. I want to take a step back, or maybe I'm getting older and it's time to sell a business. What are some of the things that I should be looking to make sure that are in place for my business? Like, what's going to make my business valuable and attractive?
So there are 30, 40, 50 different bullet points, right? Kind of what makes you successful. Joe, is it your smile? That might be a little piece to it, but there's still probably 100 other things that you do very well. I say that because a lot of people initially say, what do I have to do to make my business? It's like saying, what do I do to be healthy? Do I just run every day? You got to eat good. You got to sleep good. You got to lower your stress. A plethora of things all together make it out. It's the same with a business. Not to be elaborate with it, but your reason. You always want to start with your reason, because if you're going to sell for the wrong reason, it's going to make its way out. and you're going to look like you're trying to catch one over on somebody. This isn't 30, 40 years ago before real internet and people didn't have access to knowledge and you could just pull one over on someone and say, oh, I got you. Here's my company. I say that because it still goes on today. Somebody thinks, oh, something bad might be happening with my industry. Let me sell the company. Come on. Quit. You don't want to do that. They're going to catch on. You're not going to get the value for it either. So the 30,000 foot view, do you have it set up that you as the owner aren't wearing all the hats? The initial answer is probably don't. Because if you're an entrepreneur, you know, I'm the HR, I'm the sales, I am even the IT guy. I don't know anything about computers, hiring and firing, project management, all of that. But you want to have it set up that, what do people talk about? The school bus test, or the bus test. If you walked out and got hit by a bus, what happens to your company? Minus the life insurance money. How does it run? How does it get from day to day? Who's there to take it on? Do you have a plan written down? All of that. That's kind of your first start. After you know why you want to sell, because I could bridge off into that in a minute here, but why you want to sell and how it's structured and how your books are. You might think your business makes X amount of money, but you look at the paper and you go, have I missed something? You told me this and this is what it's making? Yeah, well, you know this. No, I don't know. And I promise you, if it's a good deal, that there's going to be financing involved, they're going to ask the same uncomfortable question too. And if they don't get an answer, they're going to hang up and not deal with you. So why are you selling it? Think about it and own that reason and see yourself. You could possibly work with the company, or you possibly could be removed completely. That's a whole different conversation we can go through. So your why, your setup, your structure is the majority of the day-to-day off your plate. Are you kind of checking in? You might be there all day, but what are you actually doing? Are you overseeing and kind of tweaking here and there? That's good. If you're up on a roof, swinging the hammer or using the nail gun every day for a long period of time, we got to reduce what you're doing, because somebody else coming in to buy your business isn't going to want to do that as much as you think they will. And your financials and your books, get that stuff in line. That's all I could say on that, because some people, I hate to say it that way, but kind of half-ass it and don't really know what they're doing throughout the year and hand that stuff off to their account at the end of the year and say, what do I owe? Well, you want to know where you're at throughout the year, because when you sell, it's not always going to be on January 1st. Rarely is it going to be that. But anyway, so those are the 30,000 foot deal. Why are you selling? How is your setup and your books? If you don't know your why, you might want to think about that. Your structure, your role, your responsibilities within the company. If you literally fell off a cliff tomorrow, could it survive? And if it's not that way, put steps in line to get it that way. And your third step, get your books in line and accurate. And if there's always unique explanations. Somebody's late on AR. Well, it's not bad debt. Here's the what. We could go on and on, but you explain the reason so that if I saw it and I go, you made this year, this year, this is where you're at so far this year. Sounds good. Not a lot of questions. That's your starting point, by the way. That's not just hand it over and sell, but that's where you want your head to be to initially start going down that road. Don't worry about value, how much. You're not going to know it until those three things are in line.
Yeah, I like that. That's perfect. And I'm thinking about, so most people haven't sold a business, myself included, but a lot of people listening have sold a house or maybe have bought a house. And I'm actually in the process of doing both right now myself. And it's similar. Like if you're going to sell your house because there's something wrong with it, then people are going to find out, and you're going to have to disclose that on the seller's disclosure anyway. So
or pay to correct it.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not hiding anything. You know, if it's the beams in the foundation are crumbling, or they're got eaten out by termites or something like that, like you're not going to hide that. So as you were talking about, like kind of skeletons in a closet or things going on with the industry, that's all going to be coming to the surface anyway. So all right, so that makes sense, and that's something that I talk about a lot in my content is get off the roof. Not just if you're looking to sell, but like your business is you're self-employed. Like you're not running a business if you're on the roof. It's actually, you're doing your business a disservice, but I think that's another topic for another day. Yeah, you've got your why, you've got your setup, the way that you're structured, you got your books and whatnot. So if you don't have any of those things right now, or maybe you have a why, but you don't have yourself removed from most of the business and your books are kind of a mess, how long does that stuff normally take to like put in place? If you're kind of planning for the future, is it 5 years? Is it 2 years? Is it 10 years? Like is there an answer for that?
Because every business is so, how can I put it? A lot of things I'll answer, and I'll just give you a heads up throughout, is going to be vague, but in a good way, right? It's almost like saying, hey, I'm 5'10", I weigh 170 pounds. Am I healthy? I don't know what his blood pressure is like. I don't know, right? It's kind of the same way with the company. So the same is, how long is it going to take to turn it around? If you're doing 20, 30 million a year in revenue, but you're the sales guy, HR, and you are working 80 plus hours a week, that's like turning the Titanic around. That's going to take some time because you need to find and train for all those serious. If you're doing a couple million and you're solely the sales guy though, we can turn it around in a month or two, right? Because you could train someone to do sales and then wear the hat and go in the background. And don't be confused. You don't need to, I say you don't need to. It's the same as anything else. If you take the time to clean something up, you're going to get rewarded for it. If you don't, you're not going to get rewarded for it. So if you say, hey, I wear all the hats, okay, you'll get dinged a little bit because somebody else coming in doesn't want to and has to pay someone else, right? Whatever you're making, you have to deduct that off. Heads up, we'll get to it later, but your sales price is related to how much you make and how much you could prove. So if you made this but wore all the hats and somebody coming in wants to not wear all the hats and make this, well, there's a direct translation. So that's hopefully to answer your question. And you can turn it around as quick as you want. If you're somebody that has a checklist and they go in the office every day at 6 and leave at 6 at night, great. Start getting the stuff off your plate, hire people, train them, explain, get the vision of the whole company. You can do it in a couple of weeks. You want some time, I guess like a seasoned amount of time to where before you start introducing the buyer. Because you don't want to turn around and say, yeah, I just hired a general manager last week. So back to talking about the offer on my company, buyer's going to go, whoa, how do you know they're going to work out next week and the next week after that? And is there some contingency plan? And so I can go on and on about it, but you could pay attention to as much or as little as you want. You could turn around as quick or not if you want, right? That's the unique thing. There's no set guidelines. Mm-hmm. Hey, if you're not in a position where you have other people run your company, you need to do it for 6 months. You need to do it for a year. No, a couple months. And it changes too. If you stay involved with the sale afterward, they know that you're there to pick up the pieces a little bit to help them move it forward. So to answer your question vaguely as possible, I apologize for that. Couple months to a year or so, but it really shouldn't take you a couple of years in essence.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that's fair enough. So in general, the size of the boat. So if you have a big ship, it's going to take a little bit longer. If you have a little kind of ski boat, it's going to be pretty quick relatively. That makes sense. So let's talk money. You mentioned it. This is going to be a big question here. What makes a company valuable?
So same thing, and I'll go back to it again and again, just like your health. Are you eating right? Are you sleeping right? Are you running? Are you whatever? But all that stuff combined. So when you start talking about the value of the company, there are probably 20 some bullet points that are looked at subconsciously or not. So it probably more if you really break it down, but in essence, how reliable has the company been? Here's a heads up. When someone buys your business today, they want to know what you did in 17, 18, 19, and into this year, right? If something feels normal, that's the reaction you're going to get. If it's like this, meaning high sales, low sales, and then all of a sudden this year, we're going through the roof. The feeling you probably have right now is, wow, that sounds crazy. The buyer says the same thing and says, I'm good, and walks away. So historically, what you could prove, your financials. That's not everything. And everybody gets kind of hung up on that, right? Well, how much am I going to get? This is my financial show. That relates to how active are you with the company? Like we were saying before, the extreme is wearing all the different hats. The less extreme is, I'm there Monday to Friday, probably about 6 hours a day, putting out fires. Okay. Then there's a removed guy. Oh, how's it going? What do you do? I go in about twice a week for about 2-3 hours. My main people figure, obviously, if something comes up, I'm in there a little bit more often or a new big project. But for essence, or for conversation purpose, 2-3 times a week, tops 2 hours. Really? All right. This guy, let's call him guy C. He's going to get a different value than guy B, who goes in Monday to Friday working 40 hours, than guy A, who's working 80 hours a week. That tied to the financials, you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
That's one factor. 2 factor, your industry, some stuff that's out of your control. An extreme example, the guy who bought payphones in the 80s probably wasn't killing it in the early 2000s with payphones, right? Way out of his control. Everyone had cell phones. Extreme way to look at that. Maybe some people say about regular cars today because it's only card sharing, but that's a whole other thing. So your industry, where is it going? Roofing's always going to be around, obviously, but are you a supplier? Are you residential? Did somebody big just come into your market? Is your market decreasing in population, places that people don't want to live anymore? But that's your home backyard where you do your business. That's the stuff out of your control, obviously. Where's your reach at? How well diversified are you? We know there's probably roofers out there that say, hey, in this, we'll just use your example. Maybe there's a tri-state area where they say, listen, any of the school districts with this name or umbrella they're under, they come to us. That's who does our roof. Oh, great. Yeah, I do $10 million a year. How much of that's tied to that school district? Oh, they love us. Like 80% of our revenue comes from them. Really? So what happens if there's a new superintendent that comes in or somebody in upper management that says, we're doing another open bid process and you're out the door? Well, they wouldn't do that. They love me. You get dinged, 1, for concentration issues. You get dinged 2 because you're not your company, nor should you be. That relationship, when you go away, we could do all kinds of things as a broker, investment banker, however you want to phrase it, to help with the transition period. One thing we can't do is make the buyer be the seller. You're a unique person. And the more you're in touch with your clients, and the more they know you, the less it is for this guy. So concentration issues tied to diversification, your market, how well your books are organized, and your role. Those are a good 4 or 5 points. You can start dipping into more specific stuff where people say, what about the equipment? The equipment. You could bang your head against the wall how much this conversation comes up. If you're the guy who has your equipment, replaces it when it breaks, that's this extreme. If you're the guy over here that's making good money, but replaces stuff just because there's a new, faster, better, bigger widget, and you're pumping a lot of your capital expenditure to that, you want to be in the middle, right? Because if you're spending a bunch of money, this is also something that goes in the financials, more of a detailed dive in, but capital expenditure. How much does it cost you every year to sustain that level of business, reinvesting into trucks, equipment, stuff like that? And we've seen it. We've seen guys spend stupid amounts of money that they actually felt was needed to run the business at that level. But when I say, I gotta take that back, nothing stupid, because they obviously run the business better than I would because they know the business better. But they're overspending when they really didn't have to, right? If your car's got 80,000 miles on it, do you really need to go trade it in? Probably get it to 100,000. We're not talking 2, right? So that thought process. So those are a lot of the things that are going to affect the value and the size of it. Okay, this is a weird conversation that a lot of sellers don't get. And your location. You're in Jersey. I'm in Colorado. If there was some small town that doesn't come up on a general radar in the middle of Iowa, and that's their market, well, heads up, there's only so many people buying a move to Iowa to buy a company at a premium, right? There's more people in Denver. There's more people in your Philadelphia, Jersey area. So where you're located will affect it to a certain extent, but that's kind of a different conversation. The equipment. be careful on how you're handling the equipment, right? Are you buying too much new stuff? Are you going into run the stuff into the ground? You're going to get dinged for that one way or another on the sale. Because if all your equipment's going to take a crap in 6 months, the guy says, I'm buying your business based on how much it makes. Yeah, listen, I looked at all your equipment. I had to replace 90% of that. It's going to be a good chunk of money. They either have to finance or deal with it. So what are we going to talk about here? Honestly, I could spend probably 3 more hours ago. There's so many bullet points that if they're not in line, they will affect each other. So hopefully I didn't ramble on too much on that. And pull me back into some part if I went off too far on one, anything that you kind of thought struck up a new thought.
No, that's great. Like I said, this is probably one of the meatier questions of the whole conversation. It's like, what makes my business valuable? We all want to know that, no matter what type of business we're in. So yeah, really, I made some notes here, like just for myself personally, like this is really educational. Indulge me for a minute here, because I talk about, we're a marketing training company. We talk about building out, having sales systems and marketing systems and processes for everything you do. How much of a role do things like that come into play an evaluation of a business? If it's let me give you some more context. Actually, there's a lot of companies out there who just are straight up door knocking. Maybe they're buying leads. They're out there just like literally knocking on doors, and that's the way that they get business. There's other companies that they have a brand. They have a brand recognition. They get inbound leads. They get people calling them consistently. They have marketing systems and all that. Can you enlighten us on how you look at those topics?
Yeah, so that's kind of, we'll talk in the industry. The industry of buying and selling businesses, value added, okay? So just like you're saying, no disrespect for the people who are door knocking and hustling. That's the way to go. But like you're saying, there's also people with a brand and have something else figured out. So literally, anybody doesn't need to know anything about roofing and just how to manage people could plug and play with that guy. His value is going to get affected in the good way. You can't put a percentage on it. Is it 50% more, 20? It just will get looked at in a better light. The same way if you pulled up to a used car lot and one car has a flat tire and the other one doesn't, identical car, you're naturally going to want to go with the one that doesn't have a flat tire. But we sure as hell know, okay, change the tire, fill it up. It's a quick fix. So the people that are called proprietary or intellectual property, that's a whole nother level. But systems in place, branding, things of that nature, that's going to help them, right? Because it's not Joe's Roofing Company. No disrespect to Joe's Roofing Company. Hope he kills it. But Joe's Roofing Company could be more like, done right roofing. Oh, because we do it right. And if we don't, we come back. Wow, that sticks a little more than Joe. Joe's a guy I might have a beer with, done it right. That's what I'm getting my house covered with. That's what I'm getting my mom's house covered. Yeah, they do it. So back to your question, the brand, always a good way to go. You look more professional. It's more appealing for your customers. And the buyer likes that, because here's another thing. They don't got to change it. If the brand's working and the company's growing and it's solid, hats off to you. And I'm going to pay a little extra for that.
Yeah, it's more of a plug and play situation. They can come in and just continue to run it the way it's been run. They don't have to go out and hustle at business and knock on doors and have those personal relationships that you were talking about before. Yeah.
Buyers don't like to change things a whole lot. So if you've got a good branding and they always want to take it and make it better, rarely does somebody want to buy a company to just do what you've been doing. They're using what you've done in your history as a runway. Well, if you've already got branding in place and systems, they get a little excited. What's next?
Yeah, they can come in and kind of, bring their special sauce into it and add onto it and innovate a little bit and, hopefully grow it pretty quickly or whatever their goals are.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's going to be super valuable for the audience. Let's switch gears for a minute here and go on to the buying end. Who buys roofing companies? Is that too broad of a question or?
No. So here's one thing to think about. I've sold several roofing companies over the years. I've sold general service related, from paving to vending, logistics, line haul, over the road trucking. And how could I put it? The same personality, the same outlook is going into all of them. roofing, I understand, is your forte, construction, all of that. And that's why we're here. But the same advice I give to any kind of company, I guess, is where I'm going with it. So who buys them? It depends the level. But you'd be amazed. Some people leave corporate America who have put money aside and say they're sick of maybe the stress or the security of their job. At any given time, they can get cut off. They know how to manage people. They're hard worker, high performer. That's somebody who might come in to buy a roofing company. There are other roofing companies that will acquire. That's more unique on an upper level. And I'm saying upper level, millions. That's when you're actually getting into mergers and acquisition. And that's called a strategic buyer. Depending on the size or the common owner that you're dealing with, if you're under, I don't know, 8-10 million a year in sales, maybe even a little bit less, it's probably going to be someone who left corporate America or possibly an investment fund that already has a strategic company in that play. So they might own a roofing supply company and say, oh, great, we got a roofing supply company. It's taken off. We need a commercial and residential roofing company in this section of the country. We'd be willing to talk to that person. That's a whole different conversation. But typically when you have investment groups and you start talking private equity, they kind of need something making $1-2 million and up. And those are the guys that are going to grow you with what you're saying, branding and a process. Because if you're just out there hustling, they look at it and say, okay, for the price I could buy this guy's business, could I spend that same amount of money and go train a couple people and do this on our own? Heads up, the answer is usually yes. If you're talking, yeah, I want $2 million. Yeah, for $2 million, I could probably train a monkey to drink a glass of milk with his left hand. That joke to put it in. But the point is, who buys roofing companies? If you're talking several hundred thousand up to 1, 2, 3 million, probably somebody in corporate America, maybe in the industry or something of the knowledge in that industry, who has money put aside, knows how to manage people, and wants to get into it. Other people in service-related businesses, home repair companies, things of that nature. And when I say small, if you're selling a business for $1 million, $1 million is real money. That's not small, but it's on the lower end. A couple million, and then we start going up to, say, 6, 7, 8 million and up. That sweet spot in the middle, that's going to be kind of a unique scenario because that's when sometimes they want the owner to stay on. That's where you're really talking about a strategic, growing it. And the smaller ones, yeah, I keep going in circles talking about it, but I'm just sitting there trying to poke holes in what I'm actually saying. Typically, people that put money aside or sick of working for any kind of company want to come out and do something on their own. Okay,
that makes sense. So they left corporate America. They don't want to be on a roof. They don't want to be installing shingles. They want to plug into something that's already operational. And when you're talking, and you're right. I mean, in the roofing industry, 1 to 2 million is kind of startup. That's like a guy or girl starts hustling, goes sell some roofs and finds a couple crews to install them. And that's pretty simple to do. So that's going to be like, if I were a buyer, I personally would not look to buy a company like that because it's mostly going to be owner operated. It's just going to be based on the hustle of that person. And I'd probably go out and say, hey, I'm just going to start my own because I'm not really buying anything. That's kind of the way I look at it. So, and certainly there are, and I'm sure there are people listening to this or watching this that are aware of some industry consolidation going on at a higher level, where you have 8-figure companies looking to grow by acquisition up to 100 million, 200 million a year. I know there's several of those things going on. And like you said, that's going to be more strategic than a strict financial acquisition, right?
Yeah, if you're talking about people selling for 100 million, 200 million. One, they didn't get a company that big without knowing what they're doing and surround themselves with the right people, right? Mm-hmm. They're kind of going to be on their own little mental island. They know what they know, and if they don't, they'll make 2 phone calls to people, whether it's their accountant, attorney, or investment banker. But you're low, and I say lower level. I mean, you sell business for 10, 15 million. Some of the conversations we've had with sellers, and I love it. I absolutely love it when they're just genuine. That they, hey, I don't know how to look at this. Tell me what I should be thinking. Like, but as we know, entrepreneurs can't tell them anything. No, I know everything. I know how to figure it out. That's a lot of our headache, honestly, because you're talking to them and they think we're just trying to ram something down their throat or get a different sales price. Like, no, just sit and listen. Just like all of this, where I could go on and on about it. All these factors do matter. A lot of them take them for granted, but you want to put them all together. Sorry, I just go off on a tangent with that.
All right, no worries. All good stuff. Super valuable content. Thanks a lot. On the buyer's end still, I was on your website earlier and I was looking at a section about buying and how the process goes for buyers. And I guess there's a portion of money that goes down and then a portion is borrowed. And you mentioned something about seller financing and why that's very, very common. Can you go into that and explain why that's usually the case?
Well, first I'll hit the financing part and how much down. There's kind of a line in the sand. So SBA, if you've heard of them, the Small Business Administration, it's like buying a home and getting an FHA loan. They don't really write the loan, they just back it. So most banks do them, they have their own criteria. SBA stops right around the $5 million mark, right? And what they're looking to finance. And typically you could get in. See, let me back up. So when people see a business and you're looking to buy a business and it says, oh, pre-approved, that's like saying a house is pre-approved for financing, right? It's kind of rhetorical. The business typically is, as long as the finances are online. But where the deal comes together is the buyer and the seller. So, Joe, you might go buy, actually a good example, you might go buy a roofing company, right? Let's take the same company. You made an offer, I made an offer for the heck of it, we're going to go try to get financing. Joe, they might come in and go, wait a second, you have a company that teaches roofing companies how to do better and grow? Wow, yeah, this guy's got experience. We like him. Okay, they might require less down from Joe. Joe, your net worth is good. You got the good experience. We don't see any skeletons in your closet in your credit. So you might be able to get in with, and let's hit the mental pause button. We know we're during a pandemic. Things are a little different with loans, but I could tell you what I've done in the past and the math on it.
Sure.
You might be able to get in for 14 or 15% down. Dave comes in, let's just say same credit, same net worth, the whole 9 yards. They get to my experience. Dave, I help people buy and sell businesses. Yeah, we got that. How about managing people? I manage the process. Yeah, ding, ding, ding. Dave might have to come in with 25%, right? My track record doesn't fit the shoe that they want it to. So that's another factor you could kind of lose your head over. And there's also times where the bank will say, we'll do the deal. We need the seller to hold 10%. Some deals, the bank will do that because they want them to share that risk a little bit. For a buyer coming into it, though, I'll answer your question a roundabout way, but I'm using actual examples, and I remember how it came up. Sometimes buyers will come up and say, yeah, I'm going through a lending process, and I want the seller to hold the note. Being in the middle, and even talking to the seller, what does it matter if the company went to hell in a handbasket and you owe all the money to the bank, or you owe 90% to the bank and 10% to the seller? Rhetorical. Not a damn difference. You still owe the money and the company went to crap. But when a buyer puts that in motion before talking to financing and getting, because financing might come back and say, hey, we could do the deal, 20% down, seller doesn't have to carry a note. If you inject that first and it kind of messes up the deal, it does kind of tick off the seller, because here's a little heads up that people don't talk about. If you have a financing deal with SBA and the seller has to hold a note, they're usually delayed, meaning on paper, that's the only way I'll put it, they can't get paid back that note until the bank loan's paid off. So then you just told the seller, hey, hold that 10% and I'll pay in 7 to 10 years. Why don't I even hold the damn note? I told you I want to retire. I want to be away from this, and I got to be attached to you for the next 10 years. So that's the portion there. But seller financing in itself, you can write a book on it. Because let's say, for figure's sake, you're selling a business for, just say, really $300,000. Something you got a small crew, you do whatever. And I come in the picture and say, listen, I'm willing to put down $200 to $250, but I need you to hold a note. Okay. But I'm going to pay you out over 3 to 4 years. So let's say the company made 80 grand, 100 grand, you sold it for 300. Okay, but I owe you $100,000 over the next 4 years. I'm technically only making 75 because I got to pay the 25 and assuming it doesn't grow. Mm-hmm. That's one scenario. And they're doing it that way. Buyer might not have the extra money. It could be a distressed sale. It could be an opportunity where the buyer and the seller just happen to cross roads at the right time. Scenario two, I'm buying your business for $1.5 million. I have the money. Would you hold a note for a portion of it? I've been in meetings where what I just said happened, and the only reason it happened was the buyer to see the reaction of the seller. Because the buyer wants to see it, the seller feels confident on everything we've talked about and how good the sales are going, how the company's going to grow. And if the seller turns around and goes, yeah, we talk about the number, but check, that's a good feeling for the buyer. Wow,
Gotcha.
he didn't BS me. And sometimes they'll go down that road and actually do the note. A little comical, a little less common, that scenario. But in a real case, okay, I'm buying your business for 1.5. The buyer doesn't have to tell you if he has the money or not. He might come up and say, hey, hold about 20% and I'll pay out over 3/4, some math like that. One thing I want to make note of, and you could poke holes or ask me another question here in a minute, there's a difference between a note and an earnout. And a lot of people...
That was my next question, though. Thanks for diving in.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, you got a mortgage on your house. That's a note, right? Promissory note to the bank. Bank doesn't really care if you call them up and say, listen, I lost my job. I got a bunch of things going downhill from you. I can't afford to pay you. They'll be nice to you. Maybe give you some leeway, but at the end of the day, they're taking the asset back. That's a note. Hell or high water, you owe that money. Earnout. The seller only gets paid if certain things are hit. That could be applied when, say, the sales price is at a premium. You've been bragging a lot. Your sales have been going up, and they're still in that untouched territory. Listen, man, I'll hit you at your number here, but I'm going to pay you X. Let's just say for figure's sake, it's a $2 million deal. Guy might come in and say, listen, I'll pay you at closing 1.5. The other 500 has to hit the same, whatever the numbers are the previous year. There'll be a little buffer zone. It's not down to the dollar and the penny. But hey, if sales are here and they slowly, you're going to get that money quarterly, monthly. That's the other thing. You could divide that up however you want.
Okay.
But in essence, a lot of people get confused. Earnout and note, oh, they're the same thing. No, the note is if you buy a business and you owe the seller, let's say again, a $2 million purchase price, I paid 1.5, I'll you $500,000 over the next 500 years, 100, 100, 100. 2.5 years in, something happens with you personally, whatever. Company's taking a dive. You can't afford to pay the guy. He technically, a lot of legal language, I'm not an attorney or an accountant, but there's paperwork in there that you'll have a lien on the business till that note's paid off. That seller could come back in, keep the 1.5, and maybe the first payment you made for the first year before it took a crap the second year. The business might be in shambles, but they do get the business back. And then they could turn and sell it for pennies to somebody else or grow it again, whatever the case. That's a note. And earnout is the seller only gets paid if A, then B scenario. And those could be more elaborate.
Okay, gotcha. So in an earnout, is it always the case where the seller is staying on in the business, or no?
It could be both. It could be both. So I'm glad you asked that. So back to your why. Why am I selling the business? If you're selling the business because you and your wife want to retire and move to Hawaii and your business is in the middle of Kansas, kind of hard for you to do that commute, right? But an earnout, this is something that a lot of sellers don't sometimes find the value in. Let me back up. You know you want to retire. You know it's not an overnight process. You know there's probably some things you could do with the business and you still have an interest, but you hate the hiring and firing and all the red tape and the paper. Let someone else do that. I sold my company to you, Joe. I say, Joe, listen, I got some ideas. I haven't been able to implement because I'm just too damn busy with all the stuff going on. Whatever the price is, we worked it out. It is what it is. Here you go. Listen, I'm going to stay involved. And when I say larger, you're several millions and tens of millions. You're probably going to pay me a decent salary to do a list of duties that we negotiated. But tied to that and above that, there might be some sort of rider, an earnout. It can even be a bonus or a management program. The end result is me staying involved with the company to grow it. I'm going to get rewarded, and it's tied to the sale of the business. But again, it goes to your why. So if you know you can grow the business and you want to stay involved, home run. Your price, you got a little more flexibility in your price now. And the reasoning is, you know the business better than the buyer. And it's not in a negative way by saying, I know I can hit that number. So you could stay involved. And if you're not involved, it's more on the shoulders of the buyer. So I moved to Hawaii, but there's an earnout. That just means I'm not getting paid. And there's a check and balance with bank records and, or that's a third party or accountant that's handling it. But the business has to be doing X amount, and I need to be getting paid if it goes above that kind of check and balance. It sounds easy for the buyer to sell a liar, but not that I've seen. And people I've talked to, I'll say it, your scumbag will surface every now and then, but not to that extent. Nothing you should really be worried about.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I always thought an earnout meant you're actually staying on in the business, so that's definitely good to know. Thanks for clarifying that.
It could be. It doesn't always have to be.
Okay. Is there a term for that where it's an earnout and you're staying on in the business, or?
No, because there could be no earnout.
Sorry, I didn't mean term as far as length of time. I meant, is there a word for that or a phrase for that?
No, and that's what I'm saying. Joe, you could buy my business. I could not have an earnout, but there'd be a management agreement that I get paid $100,000 a year. I got to work 20 hours a week, and here's a list of duties I do. You're going to pay me that as a salary if I hit these duties, not numbers. And if your business takes off, I might not get anything extra. So it's something that just because you're staying involved with the company doesn't mean there's always an earnout. Sometimes there is, and sometimes there isn't. Typically, if you're going to, though, you're probably going to have an earnout.
Gotcha. All right, makes sense. So, Dave, you've been a part of over 50, I think you said 52 transactions so far, at least on the selling end, right?
Yeah.
Can you, loaded question here, but can you distill, and I know we touched on this a lot, but like distill down, like what are some of the common characteristics of really good and smooth and mutually beneficial, like win-win scenario transactions?
It's funny because it's almost like any other relationship in life. What makes a happy marriage? Well, a lot of trust, a lot of understanding, a lot of communication, right? What makes a good friendship? Same way. Some of the greatest deals I have, and honestly, I still keep in touch with guys who I sold businesses for 3, 4, 5 years ago. I can pick up the phone right now, call them, and hey, they'll say, listen, I'm in the gym. Is this important? Or could I call you later? But trust, right? I'm not sitting here being something I'm not. I've made mistakes. Heck knows we all made mistakes. But you own the mistake, and as long as you're transparent with the seller, you build that trust. If you tell them you're going to give them an update, call them and give them an update. Don't have them calling you. It looks like you made something up. So a lot of the good deals that I've worked through have been built on that trust. And it's interesting because one of the ones I'm just thinking off the top of my head, it was in logistics. I didn't physically meet the guy for over a year. We talked for about 6 months before he actually said, hey, and I was referred to him from other people that it was this long referral line. I got referred to somebody, did a deal. They said, hey, you got to talk to my buddy so-and-so, which helps with the trust, right? If I refer someone to Joe initially thinks, what kind of person is Dave? What are the chances this person could be out of his, kind of mental realm on who he deals with? So building the trust with them. But back to the story, I talked to him for about 6 months, and he kept coming at me different ways, like, what would you do here? Why can't we do this? Great conversation, worked together, got the business together, had some people, I don't want to say lined up, but kind of I did. There were certain buyers that were looking for that, which is why I was hot with them in the beginning. Put under contract. We had a bit of a hiccup with the financing outside of my hands. Took longer than expected. There's jabs. There's days where we got off the phone, and I know when he put the phone down, he wasn't saying, oh, that David. He said some words I won't use. But at the end of the day, it was kind of funny because I met him at the closing. And I walked in, I shook his hand. He goes, I thought you were taller. I didn't know you were this tall. It's just kind of funny, and to this day we keep in touch. I took him and his wife out for dinner afterward. But point being, what made a good relationship and what allowed me to do what I'm supposed to do? Building trust with the seller means they listen to what you're saying, right? And I wasn't joking earlier, but entrepreneurs, they quite frankly think they could handle anything because they kind of did. Some of these guys built companies with nothing. social media. There's probably roofing guys out there right now that go, the heck, what is social media? But they got a $10, $20 million company just built on relationships. So I'm telling these guys, this is what this needs to look like. This is the questions I need to answer. Why does anyone care about that? Well, there's layers upon questions. So having the seller listen to somebody in my position as an intermediary and having that trust, right? Everybody wants to poke holes in me. I want to poke holes in the seller. Buyer wants to poke holes in the seller. Seller wants to poke holes in the buyer. It just goes around and around. But as long as we're clear and say, there's no guarantee to sell it. Here's what I know. Here's people I've worked for in the past. Here's what I did. Here's what I need from you. And here's the path we're going to take. I can't predict time. Some quickest business I ever sold was in about 45 days. It was right around a six-figure, $100,000 kind of small deal. The one I just rattled off to you, the guy I built the relationship, that was a $1.2 million business. That took from signing up and we're working together to shaking his hand at closing about 9-10 months. Financing took 5 months, which should have taken 3. But the person who was the loan officer technically left the company, didn't relay that to me, and everyone else in the company started calling me, asking the same questions that we covered 2 months prior. So basically, he worked on it for 2 months, did nothing. So I'm kind of telling the story because it ties into time frames that people think about it. So I promise you, our goal as a middleman is only to add value and get your deal closed to make you happy. There's some guys out there that like to hammer down and get the seller's price as low as possible so they could sell it. That's not the way we operate. But on the flip side, one advice I can give a lot of sellers is have an open mind with whatever value you think it is. Because if you're referencing some of your friends, family, or other people in the industry, and they sold their company, well, they got this, I should be able to get, you have no clue what their books look like. You have no clue about other factors that are going on. And you really have no clue if there was an earn-out or how that went. So have an open mind and apply reasoning to where it should be applied. That's kind of my overall umbrella. Sorry to rant on if that was
all valuable stuff. And I can't help but think about the home real estate market again. It's like if you want to sell your house and you think it's worth $800,000, you can list it for $800,000. But if the market's only willing to pay $700,000, then you're going to find that out. Because the market's going to come, the market's going to respond when the price is right. So same with selling your house. Don't have an emotional attachment or an ego about it. It's got to be a decision that's based on reason and the data and maybe comparable companies that were sold and whatnot. So I see a lot of similarities there. So you talked about it a lot, and obviously you're a wealth of knowledge, wealth of information. You've got a lot of experience with this. Do you ever see companies people trying to DIY a transaction like this, or no? Yes.
And it's funny because that question comes up from time to time, and I make a lot of analogies. So people out there that don't like them, I apologize, but I'm just kind of a picture.
I do.
So think about, I'm an idiot with a car. I change the oil, I put the gas in it, I keep it clean. Beyond that, it's a foreign language to me. I'm saying that because there's people I know. Say if I knew 100 people on one hand, I could rattle off who could change their own oil or who could change their own transmission, right? So to say that it's not possible to sell your own business is like say, well, Dave, I could change my oil. Gun to my head, I wouldn't even know the first place to start. I know what an oil filter is, but what do you take off? What needs to come off? How much to go? What to measure? I don't know any of that. And I could potentially jack up the whole engine. The same goes with the business. But it's less, how can I put it? It's less knowledge and experience at times. And I can't say experience. It's more looking at it through a different light. Okay. Kind of like the insecurities that we have as a person. Sometimes most people don't realize, I'm too short. My nose is crooked, something like that. Right. We see that with the business. When you have the business, you might be numb to that. Right. Oh yeah. All my customers know me. Check. That's not a good thing. Take you out. Someone else can't be you. So it gives a good perspective, and it allows us to apply. I've had all kinds of things happen with deals that some of them couldn't even make up. But the questions, right? If you have a good business, and I'm going off a little bit here, but I'll tie it back together. if you have a good business and you're talking to buyers every day, you turn into a wind-up ball. And it doesn't sound like fun, but it is. Getting to know the buyers, seeing whose personality would match to the seller, right? You're kind of playing this matchmaker. It's not all about the money and the highest price. And you start to hear all those questions over the years. Well, there's a couple that kind of float to the top a lot, right? Those are the questions that we hone in on, that when we're looking at the seller to say, all right, is this in line? Is this in line? What does that matter? What does this matter? Well, I'll tell you why, because 90% of the people wanting to buy your business are going to ask that. If we don't have the answer, we're dead in the water. So it gives that perspective. But one of the things that, and I explained this to a guy, hey, Joe, you're selling your business. I'm Mr. Buyer. I want to go ahead and buy your business. You know, tell me, what are the weaknesses in the business? Oh, there's no weaknesses. We are squeaky clean, spot on all around. I need you to get a little more creative. Kind of tell me where the weaknesses could be. You're going to be less excited to share any weakness or even acknowledge one, quite frankly.
We're the best at what we do. No one does it better than us. And you hear that a lot. Yeah.
Yep. Middleman, I could sit there and say, all right, well, Dave, what do you like about the business? You know what? It's really unique. They got a plethora of knowledge. Not just saying that. Their crew takes the certifications, does this and that. It's not just a bunch of guys thrown together. What do I like about it, Dave? The other thing I really don't like about it, it's not a huge problem. It's probably something you could probably work on. Reoccurring revenue. People love recurring revenue, right? And maybe you have a contract for a couple of years that you replace all the roofs on certain HOAs. That's awesome. If you don't, not a bad thing, but me in the middle saying, I wish they had more recurring revenue. The buyer going, oh, how difficult would that be to change? Well, he doesn't really have a sales guy right now. You would just have to add a sales guy. That's all non-threatening, because the buyer's sitting there going, oh, I could grow, which I want to do anyway. I should hire a sales guy, and I want the recurring revenue. So, right? So
right.
How bad's your day? Why had a rock in my shoe? How bad's your day? I got hit by a bus. They're a little different, right? And being in the middle, we like to shed light and kind of just be that transparent, but do it in the right way. Because if somebody, and again, if you compare the two, nothing's wrong with our business. It's great. It's awesome. Well, why is selling it then? Something's not clicking. Hey, Dave, what's wrong with the business? Yeah, it's solid. He likes to wear too many hats, or she likes to wear too many hats. We'd like to see them be a little bit more. Oh, Dave, I've managed people. I could do that in a heartbeat. You might be then one of the top buyers that we'll work with. See it. So there's a difference, and we're both saying the same thing to that guy. There might be really nothing wrong with the company. There are no negatives in his head, but we have the vision of buyers and other companies. So wrong with, maybe not. Could use a little more work. Yeah. So again, my answers kind of go off on tangents, but hopefully,
no. It all helps to illustrate what's important and what people are looking at and all that. Totally get it. So you don't have to go into specifics, of course, but how are fees typically structured in a transaction like this, with like what does a broker get, when, and all that, if someone's evaluating a transaction?
Yep. So a couple things, and mentally just on the other part, there's also times where people trying to sell their business don't know how to get from point A to point B to point C. And they do create frustration with the buyer. And the same with the buyer. Here's the heads up. Seller always thinks buyer's a liar. Buyer always thinks seller's a liar. All right. Well, if you have that, it's funny, but it's true. But the point I'm trying to make is they might have a great business and it might be what they want, but how to get from step one to step two, I'm not signing a confidentiality agreement. You're not seeing my books. Or they sign a confidentiality agreement. This guy says, you're not seeing the books until we come down and see the place. So things out of line. And they thought, I'm fed up with it. We know what should take place. We know what to tolerate. We know what to rush. So that's another element on that topic. And I apologize. Ask again what you were.
How do you get paid? What do you get paid? What can someone expect to pay a broker? You don't have to get into specific numbers again, but what's that look like?
So that'll be the funny part of this he tiptoed around the conversation. How does he get paid? No, there's standards out there. It's just unique because you never know that the reason the seller is trying to sell or the size of the company. It's not a bigger means more. There's certain criteria. So there's called business brokering, mergers and acquisitions, investment banking, all these terms everyone kind of throws around. Investment banking, this big, heavy word and all this Wall Street. Investment banking covers so many things from mergers and acquisition to financing, raising capital, the whole 9 yards. Business brokering is what you picture. I got my company, I'm selling it. The reason I'm explaining the different steps is because each of them are a little bit different. All right. Business brokering, call it with selling a company a couple million and under. There's usually a percentage fee, call it between 8 and 12%. Okay. That will be paid as a success fee when the business sells. If there's a lot of moving parts and you're doing more work and putting things together, there are sometimes payments that'll go into there that are non-refundable. Some will call it a retainer, a progress payment, whatever it is. Here's a heads up. They might pay a couple grand, and you get that refunded to you or credit to you at closing. There's some guys out there, and I've done all of these. There's some guys out there that strictly, I only get paid when it sells. Nothing right or wrong with that. It's great for the seller, but there's times where people get so busy and they sit there and say, this guy's paying me something to be involved and actually do it. And he follows up, this guy doesn't do anything, but I don't get paid until I sell it. So there's no good, there's no bad. In essence, call it 8 to 12%. I've done a deal where the 12% was higher. And the seller was thrilled about it. It was such a crappy situation where he needed the business sold. And we went through the grinder. There was a landlord involved. He said, Dave, I'll pay you extra. Great. But it was a fair deal. And I've done deals where they're smaller. All right. So if you sell a business for 10 million, are you getting 10%? You can, but chances are you're going to probably work that down a little bit. All right. Might be in the range of 5, 6, 7%. Or if you heard of the Lehman scale, where it's 10% of the first million, it starts dropping down. 9% the sec, 8, 7, or 10, 8, and going down that route. But typically when you start talking businesses of several million and up, there's a different approach that's taken. And there's different people you're involved with. There's different documents you put together. I've sold a business before with a 3-page write-up. Financials, just put together in Excel. Sell a business with a 30-page, it's called a confidential information memorandum. There's time that has to go in. There's layers upon layers. And somebody says, well, I don't get paid for roof unless I put it on there. Yeah, but rarely do you put the roof on and they don't pay it for it. So this is what I thought it was. And that's kind of our world, where the earnout is all at the end, right? So back to the fees and that, call it 8 to 10% on your typical $1 to $2 million sales price. You start going above $2 million and up, you're going to be in that, like I said, Lehman's 10% on the first million and start dropping 9% the second, all the way up. You might sell a business for 10, 11 million and get 500,000, 600,000 for it. That's kind of a fair kind of range. And the seller always looks at, I'm paying you $500,000 to do what again? Take phone calls. There's typically a team of us. We're not the only one. There's expenses that we have to lay out. There's travel involved at times. And taking phone calls isn't it. You know what it's like to run a business because you do. I can tell you there's times where I got to negotiate with my better half so I could work on a Saturday, right? Because there's only so much time in the day, but you need to get stuff done. I'm pointing that out because you can't plan. Like since we're sitting here, I'm looking over one of the clients I'm working with. He called twice today. We've played phone tag. It might be just a checking in. It might be something important. I don't know. Same with the buyer. So long story short, you're managing the whole deal. It's not just taking phone calls. You're presenting the deal. You're setting the expectations for the buyer. You're also doing it for the seller. Another thing that's interesting is there's times where you could put a sales price on the deal, and there's times where you don't need to. It's the golden question. How much is my business worth, right? I could give you a range, but rarely could you just spot on like if it was Kelley Blue Book and you got a 2019 Subaru Outback. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not a commodity.
Yeah. So that's also a factor that plays into it because you want your seller to know you're working and hustling and doing as much as you can. And there's times where more often than not, you want to put in there with the seller, hey, if I exceed and get you a premium for your business, I want to share in that, AKA the bonus. Well, right?
Of course.
You really don't know where it's going to come in at the end of the day. and even hitting the mental pause button. Here we're in the middle of a pandemic, right? They're handing out money left and right to the PPP loans, which I'm sure you've either got friends or people in the industry saying, yeah, we got to get those. Point being, they're not thrilled right now to do M&A financing, all right? Not thrilled, but they're timing. There's travel restrictions at some of these big banks. They do something called a site visit before the funding is kind of put in place. Well, you can't do the site visit if you can't travel multi-state. And so I guess I'm going into that also affects the purchase price and how things go and how we're paid too. So.
Okay, makes sense.
It's going to be a percentage. The majority of what you're going to make is going to be a percentage on the sales price. And it's going to be a higher percent for lower deals. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a little bit of negotiating probably in the upper end. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, don't lose a relationship with a banker or broker over something minuscule, because anybody worth their time kind of stands that and says, hey, this is what I'm working with my clients. If you're going to beat them up, they're going to say, all right, well, go ahead, go find somebody else who wants to fit your, because there's a lot of risk involved. So it's if you feel comfortable with the person, there's trust there. Yeah, they're handling probably the biggest asset you've ever had. And you want them to feel motivated and comfortable.
Yeah, if you're going to nickel and dime a broker on a fee and like, yeah, how motivated are you going to be to answer those phone calls or to call them back on a Saturday morning when your family's waiting for you, you know? So totally get it. And people are paying for, even if they think you're just doing a couple phone calls and a couple emails, they're paying for your years of experience that you have to ask the right questions and present the right offer and things like that. So just like the roofer who comes in to do a repair and it might take him a half an hour, but he charges $800. Well, guess what? His hourly rate isn't $1,600. It's those years of experience that he used to identify that leak immediately when the homeowner couldn't find it for 6 months, right? So it's that experience that goes into it. So Dave, I got to ask you, you've got $500,000 liquid. Maybe you've got some access to some financing. You've seen a lot of deals, a lot of industries, a lot of business over the years. What are you looking at? What are you looking at buying? What do you got your eye on?
So it's funny because a lot of people, they'll ask me that question, and it caught me off guard a couple of years ago where, on the golf course, some guy said, oh, what do you do? I tell them, what would you buy? Gun to your head right now. What would you? I said, something in logistics. I sold these FedEx routes for years. They're an interesting business because you do own the business, but you have to follow their criteria. They're growing. UPS is growing. Everyone talks about, drones flying everything in and dropping them off. Something in logistics, though, because something's always going to have to get from somewhere to somewhere. Would it be a logistics supply company? Would it be a logistics company actually doing it? Something in those lines. There's something about that I always enjoyed and it attracted me toward it. It's interesting because if you're videotaping this, maybe I'll revisit it in 10 years. I always think in the back of my head, this is just out there, but like 3D printing, right?
Yep.
3D printing comes out and it's like, oh, it's amazing. I'm not seeing it really take off because it's not for mass production. But I think in about 10, 15 years, everyone's going to have a 3D printer at their house. And when their case on their phone breaks or their mouse on their computer breaks, there's going to be some code that you have to pay the owner of that company to type in, and you got a mouse. I think that's where things are going. Where a lot of stuff's not going to be getting dropped off and flown in and shipped all over the place. But to answer your question, probably something in logistics because I just find it interesting. And during the pandemic, they were the lifesaver that got stuff from where it needed to be.
Yeah, we didn't realize how much we really depended on Amazon Prime and everything that could get delivered to our homes. It's actually made some things in our life, a little bit easier. We don't have to go anywhere to get things.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, Dave, you've really laid it down. I took a lot of notes. I think everyone listening has, even if you don't want to buy or sell a business at any point, you've got some things to think about as far as how you can improve your business and create more of an asset, and maybe get yourself off the roof or get out of the truck or fire yourself from doing certain jobs in your company. I know as an owner, I'm always looking to see how can I fire myself from doing this? How can I replace myself here, replace myself there? Not necessarily that I'm looking to sell, but I want to build an asset, and quite frankly, I don't want to work more hours. I want to work fewer hours and produce more and grow a bigger company. So really appreciate you sharing those insights, Dave, based on your years of experience and your deal making and everything like that. Any parting shots for the audience? Anything you want to kind of close out with?
Just tell anybody interested in buying and or selling a business, if you have thoughts in your head and you don't know where to start, what to look for, give us a call, give us an email. There's not a sales pitch. If you, heads up, want to sell your business, I'd love to work with you. If it's a good business, there's my sales pitch. But we like to build those relationships because you never know where they're going to go. So anybody looking to buy or sell a business, give us a call. Any knowledge we could provide you to make your situation better, that's a win for us. If we could work with you, even better. So we'd be happy to talk to anybody about what their interests are.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that. And just to clarify, your website is
thesjcadvisors.com. My name is David. Email is Dave, DAVM, at thesjcadvisors.com. Either way, reach out to us, go on the website, give us a call.
All right. Thanks so much, Dave. Really appreciate your time, and I know you're busy, and look forward to talking with you again soon.
Appreciate it, Joe. You have a good day.
You too.